We are very excited to talk about our trip to Honduras this past March. We've been looking forward to it for a long time. We have a lot of slides, a lot we want to talk about, so we'll try to contain our excitement and not talk about every single thing. But we're very open to questions afterwards. Feel free to reach out to us if there's something we didn't cover.
And as some of you know from our advertisements for this, we are doing a trip in next February, February 2023, to Honduras. And this trip was a scouting trip to get to know Honduras, get to know the people, the tourism operators there, the birds, so that when we could bring a group back, we would know more. We could choose the best places to go. We would know more about it. We would have better connections. But this presentation at we'll focus on our trip in March. So we'll tell you all about that. And then at the end, we'll do a little question and answer. But then after that, we'll have a little bit about the trip in March, or sorry, in next February. If you're interested in that, you can hold on till then, and we can give you all the details about that.
But if you're not able to go on that trip, or if you're just thinking about taking your own trip and not on a group with us, that's totally fine. No hard feelings. We still love to talk about Honduras and what you can do and how great our experience was.
So the first thing to talk about is why Honduras? Like, what made us choose Honduras over all the other awesome ecotourism destinations out there? And one of the biggest reasons is a friend of ours named Wilmer Fernandez, who lives in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and he's a birder, and he grew up in Honduras, and he does a lot to promote Honduras. He thinks everyone should go there and take in the awesome birds and visit that country, and he's very proud of it. So the connection with him and the connections that he could give us from people that he knows in Honduras gives us a big leg up on making a really nice trip. So that was a big reason why we wanted to go to Honduras. Honduras is a unique ecoregion in that it sits right in the middle of Central America, and it's kind of on the divide between northern Central America and southern Central America. There's a geographic feature called the Honduran Depression that runs across the middle, and that is in many ways a dividing line between the two different
Zones.
regions of Central America. And so you can go to Honduras and you can get birds that are considered northern Central America endemics, and you can get birds that are southern Central America endemics, not very far from each other. We also really like to, when we travel, support conservation and ecotourism and using that. And Honduras is a country that's developing that. There's some good ecotourism there, but there's still a lot more opportunity, and it's exciting to be trying to be a part of that as it grows and develops. In relation to that, Honduras is relatively unvisited. It is not as big an ecotourism destination as somewhere like Costa Rica, and so there's still a lot more development there. There's people who are coming up with new ideas, new places to stay, new lodging, new tours to help bring people in. So there's a lot more in development, and it's not as established. And in regards to the political situation, Honduras has been had some positive news lately. It's been getting more stable. They recently had an election where the opposition party won, and they have their first woman president. And there are a lot of signs of hope around that. Certainly, everything isn't perfect, but there is good news on the political front in that regard, in terms of stability and peaceful transfer of power. And we even got some feedback when we were down there that they were excited that some of the people in charge of, for instance, tourism and forestry posts were people who actually were involved in those industries and weren't political appointees, but more people who were experts in those fields. So that was really encouraging as well. So our trip plan was learn more about Honduras. That was the big overarching goal, and all aspects that we could. Our guide for the whole trip, who was with us the whole time, was Isis Castro, who is the manager of Choose Honduras. And we were introduced by Wilmer to Isis, but we had some familiarity with the company because we were down at the Rio Grande Valley Bird Festival in Texas in 2019, and we met Gustavo, who's another person involved in Choose Honduras. So we knew something about their company from that, but then really got it going with when Wilmer introduced us to ICIS, and we met and talked about what we wanted to do with this trip and with leading future trips, and we really got along well. So we thought it really went. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk more about ICIS as it goes on.
And I do want to mention ICIS is on the call tonight, so we're grateful she can be here, and she's welcome to hop in and talk if she would like, but you do not have to, ICIS, if you don't want to, or if any questions or things come up, we can interact with her about that. But we did have a great experience with her, and we're just so enthusiastic about the opportunities down there after meeting here.
For logistics, we just traveled. There was just the three of us, so we just went in her pickup. We didn't get a larger bus or van or anything. As we went around, we met many local guides. In almost every place that we went, we were with ICIS, but then we also met a guide that was local to that area. Sometimes very local. They just did tours in one spot. Sometimes they were more of a regional guide, but were experts on that spot in particular. When we were doing our lodging, we stayed at many different places, many more than you would stay on any tour where you were trying to just enjoy yourself. So we were moving most nights to a new spot, and even in spots we were just touring other places. We'd go and just tour a hotel to see what it was, and they would take us and show us the room. So we had a lot of information about different lodging places. Here's a little overview of from the eBird trip report of where we were, the locations we were at, and how many species that we saw. So we got up to 226 species. I have uploaded 98 species, photos to 98 species, but there might be more lurking in there that I just have to spend some more time with my photos for, but you'll see a few of those here. And as we mentioned, it was 10 days. In March of 2022. Just a quick note about optics. We both had binoculars, and I use a Nikon P900 super zoom camera. It's small, it's light, but it zooms way in, so it makes it great for travel and birding photography, but it does have weaknesses, particularly in low light. And you'll notice that with some of the photos here is like they'll look a little bit grainy, but in general, I really like that camera. For field guides, there are actually a number of field guides that cover Honduras, which is nice. There's this Birds of Honduras book, which just Honduras, solely focused on that. It has a lot of very good Honduras-specific information. I also really like the Vallely and Dyer Birds of Central America book. It covers all of Central America. It's a really great book with good information and great illustrations. Both of those are pretty big. So on the trip, we actually borrowed Wilmer's copy of the Peterson Field Guide to the Birds of Northern Central America because it's smaller, but it also covered Guatemala, which we actually traveled to after Honduras on this trip. And we used Merlin a lot. We used Merlin, because we both have it on our phones, we use it quite a bit. So let's get to the trip. The first part we flew into San Pedro Sula, and then we went to the north coast. And we started off, our first birding location was Lancetilla Botanical Garden, which is perhaps the largest botanical gardens in Latin America. It is, as you might guess, from being the largest gardens, there's a lot of area there. There's a lot of different areas to go birding in. Some are just preserved natural forests that are native habitats, but then they also have an arboretum and experimental plantations that you might expect from botanical gardens. Here's a black-headed trogon we saw in the natural areas. We got great views of the male and female great antshrike. And this nesting tree for the Montezuma oropendola.
With Gregg down below here for scale, it was a giant tree with many, many nests. Very fun to watch.
And listen to. They have great sounds, the oropendolas. Social flycatchers came in close for a good view. And another bird that's a target, this one's a northern Central America endemic, is rufous-breasted spinetail. So we got really lucky with having great views of that bird, got to watch it vocalize and sing. I got a little bit of video of it. Amazon kingfisher down by the river that flows through. Red-throated ant tanager. And a nice looking black phoebe. This is more in the arboretum part. As well as the blue ground dove. And then once we got to more of the arboretum part, Isis, who knows so many people throughout ecotourism industries, knew that there is a shop here that is run by local women that uses the fruits from the arboretum. So a lot of exotic fruits from all around the world, they have these trees. Well, they use those fruits to make jams and jellies and wines, and they sell them there. So we had a fun time going and getting a little taste test of those various exotic fruits and buying a couple to try on our travels. And then that's me on the left walking through some bamboo plantations that they have. The next spot we visited was Rio Santiago Nature Resort, which, despite the name resort, the lodging is currently closed. There's the owner, I forget what happened to the owner, but they currently are not open for you to stay there, but the trails are open and the hummingbird feeders are still maintained, and that is the biggest draw of this place, is that wonderful feeder area.
If anyone is looking for an investment opportunity, we hear it is available for purchase, so it could be something to consider, taking over as the owners and reopening the lodging and restaurant. It's a beautiful place, lots of flowers. I would include so many flower photos, but we already had too many photos as it was, so just one quick waterfall, one flower, and then some birds.
A broad-winged hawk here on a gumbo limbo tree. You can see that peeling bark. They sometimes call that the tourist tree, like the tourist got a sunburn and is peeling. A rufous mourner high up in the trees. And then these are some of my best photos of the whole trip are the hummingbirds at the hummingbird feeders here. The green-breasted mango, the crowned wood nymph, white-bellied emerald, violet saberwing. It took me a while to get that one because they like to perch in the dark underneath a roof, so I had to wait till I found one that came out in the light. White-necked Jacobin, and that's the male, and on the male on the right, the female on the left. And these have all just been single shots, but here's one that shows 3 of those white-necked Jacobins and give you more of a sense of how many birds there were around. There were lots of hummingbirds, very active feeders, and they would come to the feeders, but then you also saw them perched all around. Great spot to take photos. And on the left, you can see the deck. That's where we were, and there's hummingbird feeders all around that deck raised up, and then they have a little pool there. And our guide for that day was Isis, as you can see there, but then Yafet was also our more local guide for our time at Rio Santiago.
Maybe we'll just pause briefly. Stephen, were there any questions so far? I can see that you're off mute. Maybe not. Okay, we'll just continue then.
This is just to give you a sense of the landscape. Looking from the road that we were driving along the north coast there up into the mountains. And those mountains are Pico Bonito National Park. And then there's a coastal plain, and then the ocean is not that far away. So you have really fairly tall mountains pretty close to the seaside, and so you get a lot of different habitats pretty close to each other. Second spot we visited is the Cuero y Salado Wildlife Refuge. And this is a very large wildlife area that's formed where these rivers meet the ocean, and that's how it got its name. They got this nice fun painted map here, and it's such a big area. On the right, you can see Salarabara. That's where we started, and we did some of the rivers over on that side, but we never got all the way over to the other side. It's such a big area. Most of the birding here is on boats through the mangroves. It's largely mangroves, so it's watery environment, and you need to use a boat. And there is a 6 mile adventure to get in, which we'll
So
get to in a little
you
bit.
start here at La Union, and then you take special transportation to get up there. And here's the transportation, this neat little cart that I know some people are familiar with from other regions.
Here they call it a burra, and it is a cart that goes on a railroad, but there's no motor or anything. It gets pushed by someone riding a motorbike behind it. So, oh,
So here's an example of what the tracks look like. There isn't always space for the motorbike on both sides, so they have to switch sides from time to time, which side they're on, to push the cart. But it's a very scenic tour, and it's very different and very fun. And you get to see good birds on the way as well. And this is what it looks like when you get to the mouth of the estuary.
And one of the highlights of this was the bird that we saw in this tree. And I say we saw it, but the one who spotted it was Kelly from a distance away as we're boating by. The guides knew the bird liked this general area, but Kelly spotted it in the tree and told the guide, hey, turn around, let's go back.
So if you look closely, you can see it right in here. And this was our first ever sighting of one. So I was very excited and had to take a selfie and show where it is up here. Maybe you can guess what it is. Here, right here, is a northern putu. So they obviously have amazing camouflage. They're a nocturnal bird with a huge mouth. During the day, they perch on trees like that and blend right in like a branch or snag. So I wanted to just sit there and watch that bird all day long. It was so neat.
And we did spend quite a while with it, as you can see from the number of photos that I got. But you can also see what my zoom on my camera could do. With good light, you can zoom way in and see all these details on the bird. We also saw a roadside hawk in there, which might be the farthest from a road I've ever seen a roadside hawk since we were in the mangroves. And then we saw some mansled howler monkeys, and they were right down close to the water. We could get really good views.
Super relaxed, feeding.
But they were not being fed. We were not giving them food. They were just eating food from the trees. And we even saw a little baby hanging out with the mom. Very cute.
I definitely wanted to bring them home to make friends with our cats. That little baby.
Little blue heron. White-necked puffbird pair. A squirrel cuckoo. One that I could actually get a picture of. And here are some scenery photos to give you a sense of what it's like to move through the mangroves. These are the water roads, basically, that we were going down on the boat. Some were wider and some got narrower. That's the boats that they use there to get around.
They are very small boats, so it is nice. You can be very close to the action, close to the birds and close to the trees.
We saw a boat-billed heron, and it was a great experience with the boat-billed heron, watching it pick sticks and choose them carefully for its nest, and then fly across the water and actually go to its nest. This bird is sitting on top of a nest that it's built there. You can see a little bit the stick sticking out, but even though it was very close and like only maybe 4 feet off the water or something, it was still very well hidden and hard to see. If the bird hadn't flown in, we wouldn't have noticed. Black-headed trogon. And at one point, we saw a whole flock of tiny little warblers way up in the trees, and we decided by far the best way to look at these was to lean back on the boat and look straight up. A bare-throated tiger heron. northern jacana, yellow-crowned night heron, and here's our guide selfie. It's Jose Chepe with Isis, Kelly, and I, and this is at the sort of headquarters of the
wildlife refuge there.
And we took a walk around a little bit on our way to go get some lunch at a local place, and we saw 2 hummingbird nests of rufous-tailed hummingbirds. And here you can see the babies inside the nest, a tiny little nest. And that's the orchid room at the headquarters, and another shot of the burra that's ready to take us back along that 6-mile road to get back to La Union.
And we did have some cushions to sit on, so that gives you the sense of how the locals use it, but they did bring out the cushions for us, so it was a little bit padded and more comfortable for our experience. And there you can see the driver with his foot on the corner of the cart to push it along. Takes a lot of skill. It was really cool. Another place we went was this artisans place, Artisans and Guides. And so it's an organization that teaches kids art and nature guiding both. Really neat. I wanted to visit as soon as I heard about it. So here are some of the paintings at the center. And you can see how they reuse materials. There are some old tires here for the eyes of the owl. Some of the paintings of the young people in the group, the members. So a great place to get a souvenir of your favorite bird, or you can paint your own bird. We did a little mangrove scene here with Gerson, our teacher. And there we are with our finished products.
Little mangrove sunset scene, which was fun because we were just in the mangroves earlier that day, so it was very appropriate. And once we left, we went over to a Garifuna community, which is right along the beach, and Garifuna is a local culture, and it's one of the fun things about traveling like this is not just getting to see birds, but getting to experience the local culture. And one of the things we wanted to do was go to a Garifuna village and eat at a place. And one of the specialties they have is a drink called gafiti, which is a herbal bitters. That's an alcoholic drink, but they're very famous for it. And in this restaurant had their own, so you see our picture there with the giant novelty-sized bottle of gafiti. You can also see in the picture with the food, there's a little shot glass of it on the left. The lodge at Pico Bonito is, I would say, the premier birding lodge in Honduras. It's very well known. It attracts a lot of people. It has great birds. It has great infrastructure and trails and a birding tower. It is well known for lovely Caatinga in particular. And here are some photos of the lodging. And then some of the birds we saw. Black-throated trogon. Here's the birding tower that we got to go up early in the morning. More trogons we're taking photos of.
Digiscoped.
Up on top of the tower, I got this photo of a striped-throated hermit just leaving the flower.
Here was another special one, another putu. This was the great putu, and we weren't able to spot this on our own. This one, the guides pointed out to us, was way up high in the tree, very large, very well camouflaged, in the shade, and yet I was able to get this photo on the right with my iPhone with the digiscoping method, so that was really cool.
And it's one of those reasons that you want to have local guides, because the local guides knew where these putus like to roost, and they can take you that area, and then you can spot them. But if you're just looking in general forest, they're very difficult to see. Here's us taking pictures through the scope, and me taking pictures with my camera of that putu way up there. Our guide here, one of our guides here was Elmer. Picture of Elmer with us. Some more birds, collared arisari, chestnut-colored woodpecker, and a view of some more of the grounds.
Such a beautiful place.
Very nice. We had, after our morning of birding, we had lunch. One of our other guides there was Olbeen. Olbeen is strongly connected to that guides and artisans place. He spent a lot of time there as a kid, and so but now he's a full-time guide.
And like so many places in the tropics, there are bird feeders just right there, so you can just relax, have your meal, enjoy the birds. There is a big lodge or a restaurant room right there and bar. Very comfortable, very nice.
White-eyed vireo. Then we moved regions from the north coast, where we just were, down more into the center in the area around Lake Ojoa, which is one of the best birding areas in Honduras. Our first stop was Luna del Puente, which is a private nature reserve, chocolate farm, coffee farm, birding lodge, camping site, all these different things. That's really a really cool place. Both Kelly and I fell in love with Luna del Puente. We really liked it for a lot of different reasons.
Very charming. Bird art won me over right away. You can see painted on the lodging and on the keychain there. Just really cute, really comfortable. Great Taylor's leaf frog here we found one night with the help of Santiago there, and then some eggs. So here's an example of their restaurant area and then their camping pavilion area with the bonfire. Very neat for getting up close and personal with the jungle at night. If you are interested in jungle insects, it's great. If you're not, there's great lodgings. You can just go in and close your door, but a really neat place.
Green jays. In the morning, we came out of our lodgings and they were right there hanging out. These are pictures that Kelly took with my camera of those green jays hanging out right outside our place. Got a photo of yellow-billed cacique, normally a very skulky bird that doesn't like its photo taken, as you can see from this photo. Turquoise-browed motmots we saw in many places, but definitely here. A northern barred woodcreeper on the trees around the lodge. Rose-throated Bacard with some nesting material. Toady motmot, and I apologize, this photo isn't very good. That's the only one I got. It was a very brief view. The motmot came in, perched right in a perfect spot, and stayed for like half a second. I fired off one shot, and then it left. But I wanted to include it because that's a really cool special bird, that toady motmot. The ochre-bellied flycatcher we spent a lot of time with, got some good videos as well as the pictures. Yellow-throated euphonia. And here I am with Isis as well as Damian and Santiago. Damian is one of the owners of Luna del Puente, and Santiago is a family member of his from Argentina that came up to work at Luna del Puente.
More details of some of the charm, and this little bird element there, the part of the decor in the rooms, I thought it reminded me of these next few birds that we saw while we were there. So I was trying to decide maybe it was modeled after one of those birds that we saw, the seed eater.
Or the piratic flycatcher. We went on a chocolate tour there. So these are cacao trees and pods. So you get to go out to the farm and see what the flowers and the fruits look like when they're ripe and unripe. And then they take you through the process of making a chocolate bar from that. So this is the dryer, the solar-powered drying room where they bring the coffee or the chocolate in. This is on the left is inside the drying room, and on the right is more of the process of making hot chocolate drink or a chocolate bar, which we got to do. then we left for lunch and went to Dig Beyond a Restaurant, which is a farm-to-table restaurant with an herb garden in the back. And this was fun. This is an example of how Isis was a wonderful guide for us, in that she knew everyone, and she had worked at somewhere that gave out grants as awards for entrepreneurs who were interested in expanding their ecotourism or had ideas that they wanted to do. And so we went many different places that had various, she's like, this is another award-winning place, and here's this. So this was one of those spots that she brought us to. There's the herb garden in the back, and us having lunch.
And some more examples of some of the food.
And beer.
Oh yeah, and beer. Salvavida. Lifesaver.
And this is a fruit stand along the road. There are many different varieties of bananas that they had there. So we
enjoyed trying some of the different ones. I remember the little ones are called dátiles. I don't remember the big one, but it was really fun to try the different kinds, see the different kinds.
And then we went back to Luna del Puente for some afternoon birding. One of the highlights of that was this ferruginous pygmy owl that we got to spend a bunch of time with, get really good close views of. Cinnamon-bellied saltator, and the fork-tailed flycatcher. Kelly likes to win the competition that says who can spot the bird that's farthest away on the trip.
It's true. So I spotted this one like 3 fields over, and it took me a long time to point out exactly where it was, and then everyone was so amazed that I had seen it that far away. We hadn't seen it yet on the trip, so it was a fun find.
That was a lifer for us, actually. Yellow-bellied Alania. Pineapples.
Yeah, we were along some pineapple fields, so that was pretty fun.
Yellow-faced grassquit. To give you a sense of what the pineapple fields looked like where we were birding. It was a very birdy afternoon. Lots of birds coming and going. And another group pic with all of us this time. Sun was setting.
So yeah, that was just a gorgeous spot. Fun afternoon trip.
We were sad to leave after only one day.
Yeah.
But then we got to go to Panacam Lodge, which is in the National Park Azul Miambar. And it's an acronym in the way that they often do it in Spanish-speaking countries, where they take almost syllables from each word instead of one letter to make a word out of it. So Panacam, and this national park has a lot of birding infrastructure. It has a lodge, restaurant, birding towers, trails. It's a contrast to some other national parks that we'll get to later, but this one is well developed for ecotourism. Here's an example of the lodging we stayed at.
And this is the view on the little balcony right outside our room on the other side of the building. So a lovely place to stay. Here's outside the restaurant. So we had breakfast there overlooking that area and the feeders.
And more bird art inside the restaurant.
Then they had won an award for doing these digital graphic animals. So when you scanned the sign, this little animal would appear and it was animated. And so you could take a selfie with this animated animal. So we had to test that out and had fun with those different digital animals. And then some live animals as well, like this coati. Always fun.
Lessons Motmot. Honduras is one of the centers for Motmot diversity. They have more species than any other country. And lessons, there were lots of lessons in turquoise-browed. There was the toady that we saw earlier. Here's a chestnut-headed oripendula, goofing around with the branches. Another northern barred wood creeper. And the keel-billed motmot, and that's one that's easier to see in Honduras than most other places, so it's one of their specialties. Motmots in general are a specialty, but that motmot in particular is one to come for. Violet saber-wing coming to the feeders outside the lodge. Broad-winged hawk eating a cicada. that was right outside the lodge as well. We got great views and watched it there for a long time. There were many Wilson's warblers. This is one of the few I actually got a photo of because they move so quickly, but we saw Wilson's warblers everywhere.
They have a number of towers you can climb up and observation platforms at different levels, so you can be seeing at different levels into the canopy and the understory.
And you can see Lake Yohoa in the distance here. So we're in the mountains around it, but from the birding tower you could see all the way down to the lake. Here's a mistletoe tyrannulet that we saw from the top. Got very good views. Normally they're tough because they're a canopy species, but when you're in the canopy with them, you can be right next to them. Swallow-tailed kite that flew overhead.
Was this called like the monkey's ladder or something? Some very fun vines Isis was telling us about and pointing out.
From one of the towers, Kellie spotted another bird at a long, long distance that after much discussion,
debate and discussion and bad photos and review.
This photo is zoomed all the way in and then way cropped down. This gives you more of a sense of that's even way zoomed in, but at that distance from that angle, it was a bit difficult to tell what it was.
But a double-toothed kite.
Yeah,
a good
a
find.
Cool one. Honduran emerald is, as you might guess from the name, a specialty of Honduras. It's the only species or country-level endemic to Honduras, and it is one of the best spots for it is in this Lake Yohoa region that near El Rancho restaurant and hotel. And it was only recently discovered to be there. So that's a fun example of ecotourism developing, people discovering new populations and saying, oh, here's a really good spot for it. So we got taken out to where they are and got really good looks and views at this Honduran emerald. And Honduras is not a terribly big country, so a country level endemic does not have a large range.
So we were pretty happy after seeing that bird. That was a really fun experience. There we are afterwards looking for a few more birds out in that open area.
Alex was our guide there. He's the owner of El Rancho. So he helped us find them. And other specialty birds of the area like this yellow-tailed oriole.
We had some really good lighting for more turquoise-browed motmots. I think I took those shots.
Yep, you took that one.
I was really enjoying those. Beautiful birds.
Dusky cap flycatcher. And we spent the night at Fundación Ale. And Fundación Ale is someplace that we've
been hearing about for a while through Wilmer. He does a lot of support there and really advocates for them and the kids and trying to connect them and expose them to nature and bird watching. And so we're really trying to think about how we can foster that connection between the kids and nature and provide related career opportunities for the kids.
Being a nature guide is a viable career and a good career. So getting the kids exposure to that, it really helps everyone. Helps them have a career, and it helps conservation and connection.
So we brought some nature puzzles and bird magazines and some different things to donate there to the kids, and had fun meeting with them and sharing some of the items we brought. And our youth guide there was Wilson. He's on the left showing off some artwork they had done. And the other kids around are looking through the books and magazines and puzzles and things that we brought to share with them. So a few of them know a bit of English, and so it was fun for them to practice with us. And many of them just know a few words, and so we would say the names of the birds in various languages and answer some questions. And it was really fun to have some of those conversations.
And both Kellie and I speak Spanish, so we were able to speak with the kids. But the ones that knew some English were enjoying the chance to practice, work on that a little bit.
And so at this campus, one of the job training centers they have is at the barber shop. So Greg thought that was really neat and wanted to include a photo.
The next national park was Panamosab, which is another one of those acronyms, and that's the Parque Nacional Montaña de Santa Barbara. It has very little birding infrastructure. It is not developed the way Panacam is, almost all of it being built by a local man, Leonel Chavez, who has been buying land on the outskirts and building little cabins and does guiding for it. So we went with him and his family, are doing ecotourism there. And this, as a developing place, you can feel that like you're going there and spending money really helps protect that habitat and get this ecotourism thing going. Here's Don Leon on the left. He's showing us one of the epiphytes, air plants.
He's done a lot of replanting to help the forest regenerate. It had been, how do I want to explain, sort of deforested from farming and other things happening. And so he was doing a lot of planting of different flowers for pollinators and for birds. And as he was telling us about this epiphyte in his hands, we realized that that little thing that looks like a leaf is a katydid. So it was a fun example of talking about how when you bring the plants back, then the insects come back and the birds. And it just feels like such a great success story where, as Greg mentioned, you can really see afterwards he told us that the tip we gave him that day for guiding us, he was using to buy more acres. It's like that direct. You give him some money and he goes out and buys more land.
Put a down payment down on another piece of property that he could protect. Emerald-chinned hummingbird that we saw. Our day up there, we got, I don't know, either lucky or unlucky when the weather, depending on how you consider it, got very foggy. Some of the most dense fog that I've ever seen, which made it hard to see the birds. Even birds that were quite close, it was hard to see, say nothing, photograph.
But it was really cool. It was very nice atmosphere.
And you did feel like you were on the roof of the world.
Yeah, being in that special cloud forest. Yeah, and we did still have some great birds. It was just a very special environment. Isis was a little bit cold. You can see how the colors and even the shapes of the birds are sometimes a little hard to make out, but it made each bird feel more special. We had to work harder to see them and tell what they were. Another thing that was really special is that Leonel's son brought us up a warm handmade lunch, and it had taken us like 2 hours to hike up this really steep mountain, and he ran up it in 20 or 30 minutes and the food was still warm, so then we got to have our warm field lunch.
And that gives you a sense of how dense and foggy it was. We were looking for some of these high altitude specialties that were like the resplendent quetzal lives here. We heard it. We didn't end up being able to see it, probably partially because of the fog. Wine-throated hummingbird. And here is one bird that I'm only about maybe 10 feet away from this bird. And that's the best photo I could take. It ended up being a rufous collared sparrow, but you couldn't tell until you got really close and were able to see it a little bit. But the fog was just so dense. Here's that wine-throated hummingbird we were looking for. Did get some good views.
An example of its habitat and how that looked. And here's an example of one of the cabins that Leonel and his family are building, rustic camping cabins. And we like this sign about being friends of the jaguar, protecting the jaguar, and prohibiting hunting and deforesting. And then Leonel and his family in his house, some of the bird and nature art, and then his bird book with all the quetzales and annotated, and even their dining room table there is painted with the quetzales. Yeah. Very committed family. Really great to be able to partner with them a little bit and support the reforestation and protection of that area.
And really just an amazing success story that they've got going there with what they've been able to do. Just a few people who are really focused, and they've been able to do a lot of good preservation activity there.
And then all their neighbors and the community see what they're doing, and it spreads from there. Yeah. And then in connection with birds and beers, we thought this was so appropriate. We went to this brewery pizza place. There's an example of our pizza.
It's called the D&D Brewery, and they had lots of good microbrews.
So I had to try that
Had
out.
to try it out, but
And you can see here, this is the shape of the lake, Lake Yohoa.
for their tasting flights.
And Greg's showing off the great gray owl, trying to get some people to come up north to visit Minnesota.
Bioparque Paradise is another eco lodge near Lake Yohoa, and we stayed here. They have just a few motel rooms, but then they also have some raised cabins with large interior spaces that you can go with larger
Yeah, great
groups.
for families. Yep, bigger groups.
And some nice trails and a stream through there.
Yeah, really picturesque and beautiful.
And well planted, lots of beautiful plants.
So many flowers. I took so many flower photos. I worked hard to not put in too many.
Rufous-naped wren right in the parking lot. Keel-billed toucan up in the trees. Barreline hummingbird we saw in several locations. Boat-billed flycatcher, one of those Kiskadee lookalikes. Yellow-winged tanager giving us good views.
An example of some of the larger lodges. So these are for groups of people, but like family groups or youth groups. There were some like student groups while we were there.
Yeah, a whole bunch of kids were there at the Bioparque. Crimson collar tanager.
I just love this plate when we had lunch there with the American goldfinches. I had to include that shot.
And a baleada, which doesn't look like much more than a tortilla from the outside, but that's one of the classic dishes of Honduras is the baleada, which...
A bit like a pupusa or a arepa with beans inside.
Beans and a tortilla around it, sometimes with cheese or
avocado,
meat or other things, but the base is really just the beans.
Very simple and very tasty. Perfect for while you're out birding. And more really cool bamboo stands. Good for the bamboo specialist birds.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time looking to see if we could find an owl roosting in one of those, but we never did.
But they're there.
More Barreline hummingbirds that were just posing for us.
And then we spent time actually at the lake, not just in the region, but looking at the lake, which was really cool to see.
This spot, you can see on the bottom, we basically just pulled off to the side of the road. There were a few benches there, and we were looking out at the edges of the lake and saw a lot of cool birds right there. In particular, we saw a bunch of snail kites. I think I put 50 on my eBird checklist, but it very easily could have been more.
So many.
There were so many flying around back and forth, and there were nests there. It was really fun to be checking out those snail kites.
You can just check out that bill. It's amazing.
Bare-throated tire heron in the reeds. A lesser yellow-headed vulture, which they look a lot like turkey vultures, especially in flight. So it was really nice to have one come down and land so I could get a good photo of it that can really show you, yep, that's a yellow-headed vulture, and that doesn't have the more reddish head that the turkey vulture has.
It's not just the sun glinting off a turkey vulture head making you question, is that a turkey vulture or is it the yellow-headed? Yeah, very nice and clear.
A limpkin. Purple gallinule. And those last two photos were taken from the same spot that you see on the left photo there, out over this dock area.
This is probably one of the most touristy places we saw. Everything in Honduras feels so authentic and not touristy, but then this was an interesting little spot. But there were still good birds there. And then we had lunch right there, so we were on this balcony and we could eat and enjoy our beverages and watch for birds. I like how in that last photo it looks like there's an egret right there.
Right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fun stop, but then we had to get on to the next location for our itinerary, which was Copan Ruinas, which is the site of a major Mayan
Historical site,
historic
the
site
ruins, yep.
there in the state of Copan. We stayed at the Mayan Hills Hotel.
They have a butterfly house right there, and it's a very hilly site, so lots of stairs. It was a really neat site to stay at. And we thought it was interesting. They had these signs about how in this business, 100% of the employees are vaccinated against COVID. So that was interesting to see how careful people were being there.
Here are some shots of the butterfly house, the mariposario, with some of the butterflies that were out. And a cinnamon hummingbird that was out on the grounds. We saw that guy every morning. And we took a visit to Hacienda San Lucas, which is not a little bit outside of town, up on a ridge. It's got a lot of good birding there, hiking trails around. There's a little archaeological site there. And one of the highlights is the deck that has stunning views overlooking the valley.
The other huge highlight is all of the nesting macaws. So the first time I saw one, it was way up here in this tree in this big rain barrel type container. And I thought it was just a model, an example of like, oh, this is the kind of nesting container that macaws can use. And here's like a little statue of one. But no, it was a real macaw in there. So that really shocked me and delighted me, and was so fun then as we saw more of those nesting boxes in use on site. And then Isis was showing us how the Honduran money has the macaws on there.
It is their national bird, is the scarlet macaw.
So this is by the hiking trails right there on the property. Isis was involved with getting the signage up so that people who even aren't birders can learn a little bit more about what they're able to see out there. And this is from the archaeological site. It's called Los Sapos, the toads. So you can see a toad right here.
That's probably the largest and best preserved of the toads on this site. But it was fun to have that little site right there that we could walk out to and check out. Squirrel cuckoo. Another one actually let me take a shot of it. I was surprised. More motmots, turquoise-browed motmots this time. And here's us having lunch on the lawn at the hacienda, looking at birds while we're having lunch. It's always fun to combine those two activities.
Some more examples of some of the food there. Everything was great. More of the bird theme things. Some of the lodging there, very nice. All the comforts you could want, very relaxing.
White-throated magpie jay. This we saw, I remember, from lunch, sitting there, getting distracted from the food by trying to get photos of the birds. Black-headed saltator as well. And this is the deck overlooking the valley down below. And from here you can see some of the archaeological site, the main Copan Ruinas archaeological site there. And there's also a nest of the scarlet macaws overhead. So then...
very easy to spend a lot of time there, relaxing, enjoying the birds, enjoying the view.
Enjoying the margaritas.
That too. Margaritas and macaws. And then the sunset. Macaws flying in. More macaws.
Fun to see them not just sitting in the nest boxes defending them, but out and flying and feeding. And there was at one point a few of them flew in and were just screaming at the other ones. They're very, as you might expect from a very large parrot, they're very loud. So when they were all going off, it was a very, very raucous. Here's the pool at Hacienda San Lucas. Also good birds overhead, such as
Also good
this
views.
Altamira oriole.
Good birds, good views everywhere.
And the olive-throated parakeet as well. Much smaller than the scarlet macaws.
And then Isis with the parrot in the background back there. I thought it would be good for her company to get a shot with the macaws in the nesting box right there.
We went to Macaw Mountain, which is a rehabilitation and breeding center for scarlet macaws. And it was started on an offshore island in Honduras that has many Americans that live there. And there were a lot of unwanted pet macaws. And these are large parrots. They live a long time. So the person who founded it started just taking in macaws that were left behind. But land in Roatan is very expensive, so they decided that they would move to Copan Ruinas to have more space and then to start doing breeding programs so that they could reintroduce macaws into the wild. So they have a facility here for raising, the eggs, hatching them, raising them up, getting them ready to be out in the wild.
So an incubator with some eggs here, great signage so you could learn about what they're doing. Here on the left you can see how the birds look as they develop and get a little bit older.
And they have a spot with some of the birds they're not able to be released. They were pets for too long, they got imprinted on humans, or for whatever reason they can't be released. So they put some of them out for people to go and take their pictures with.
But it's also a great opportunity for the macaws to have some entertainment and interact with people. You don't touch the macaws, but you stand there, and if they want to, they can interact with you. And on the left there, you can see some of the macaws were really interested in Gregg's Birding with Gregg hat, and they were starting to pull the little button off the top. So some people had to come and help him so they wouldn't steal his hat.
Copan Ruinas is a very large archaeological site, very impressive. It's most famous for the number of sculptures that are there and preserved, and sort of a unique style of sculpture compared to other Mayan sites around the Mayan world.
And we've been to a number of different Mayan sites, and it's still interesting. Like, there's so much good information. There we had a guide, Yobani, who knows a lot about the Mayan culture and the site, and also about birds. So here Isis and Yobani are with another one of those signs that Isis helped get put up with the different birds that you can see on the site, including the turquoise-browed motmot. Always happy to photograph that great bird. And more scarlet macaws, the guacamayas.
There are many there. There are nests there. There were also some feeding stations for them there, so they came down quite close. Got great views of them.
So it was really cool to see the success of that reintroduction program, how people there are pairing the idea of the Mayan culture and the traditional bird, the national bird, and trying to associate those two together and instill that pride and ownership and that desire to protect the birds and help the birds.
The scarlet macaws, one of the reasons that they're endangered, perhaps the main reason, is trapping for the pet trade. So they're a very cool, beautiful bird, so they get trapped and taken out of the wild. So it's important to have a populace that is interested in having them in the wild. And that is something that they've been able to do at Copan Ruinas.
So just a beautiful site. It's really nice trees.
Some examples
all
of
the sculptures and ornamentation that the guides can really tell you a lot about.
And this wall is a fairly unique feature in that it wasn't really a big, long wall when the Mayans were there, but this was actually eroded away by the river. There's a river down below, and it had come up and started cutting away at this wall. At some point, it was diverted away to protect the structure, but it actually makes a very interesting archaeological site because it's basically a cutaway of the whole site. So archaeologists can see layer by layer everything that's there from the river having done that. And this scene where we are is actually on the back of one of the paper bills. So Kellie is showing there the paper bill, and we're looking at it, and Yobani is pointing out, like, yep, here we are. That's this building, that's this building.
Yeah, it exactly aligns. That ball court you might recognize, the classic ball court structure is on the bill, just so. So it's fun to be in that spot where you get the exact view that's on the back of the money. Just so much to look at, so much to see. It's really fascinating. And sometimes we talk about going on birding trips or doing birding trips with people who aren't birders. And this is a great example of something you can do that is interesting to different people with different interests. You can be focusing more on the Mayan culture and the facilities, or you can be doing birding, or you can be doing a mix of both. Just really cool for that. More views of the ball court and some of the ornamentation there. We love this turtle. There he is again. Just really well preserved, really interesting to see. And of course the macaws. They make everything more beautiful.
This shot was so close. Like, I wanted to put it in to show you like how close the macaws are, and you can do things like get great flight shots of them. I didn't, but we didn't have a lot of time
It
here.
is possible, though. Someone else can
do it. It was
right
there. I was almost in focus. But if you had the time to sit around and actually focus on your photography a little bit, you could get a lot better photos. We were in such a whirlwind tour that there wasn't a lot of time to sit and like make the best photo. But the possibilities are there.
Yeah. And if, like us, your first view, if you've been lucky enough to see scarlet macaws in the wild, is of macaws very far away, as it was for us when we were in Belize. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was really cool to see them. They were super far away on a mountain. You had to zoom in all the way to make them out. So to see them this close just felt incredible. It was really a cool experience.
And then this is the very end of our trip. We actually were set to take a bus to Guatemala, and there was a delay.
Just a little delay, but
just a little delay,
enough of a delay that you ask yourself, oh, what should we do instead of sitting around at the bus station? I know, let's go birding.
So we'll walk 2 blocks down to the river, and we found a spot where birds, it was a hot afternoon, and birds were just coming in to bathe in one of the pools at the edge of the river. So this little tiny pool was just a hotbed of activity. So many birds coming and going. Painted buntings, yellow-winged tanagers, orchard orioles.
Then you can see other things too as they're coming in and taking their turns in their little private pool bird bath. Yeah, just lots of different birds coming in. So it was a fun send-off to sort of cap up our trip here before we had to go. Oh yeah, kingfishers there.
Kingfisher on the river too. Spot-breasted oriole. Orchard orioles. Yeah, just a fun little spot.
And because it was unexpected, because we thought we'd already be on the bus by then, it felt like a nice last extra gift to end our experience there. So it's been about an hour, a little bit over an hour, and we're thinking that concludes our March 2022 trip. We're happy at this point to hear what's been going on in the chat, if there are questions or comments. As I said, we'd love to talk more. We have a ton more to share, but we wanted to make sure we didn't go too long. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit briefly about the trip we're planning in February. So let's see. Do we want to?
I'm going to bring up the chat and
yeah.
see what's in there. It looks like
before we start talking, I'm going to put some things on the chat, repeats of some links to go to 2 podcasts. One from Leonel we put up already. Another one where Wilmer is interviewed, and then I'll put up the link to Gregg's website where this recording will be added.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Leonel did an interview with Three Rivers Park District up here, and we heard it. It was really cool, and they translate it from Spanish to English, so that's a great thing to share with everyone. So we're just reviewing the chat here.
Going through the chat. If anybody wants to, unmute and ask a question, feel free.
Greg Scott Clark here, and I just want to say this was one of the most interesting presentations I've heard as far as this group is concerned. And part of that is because I think a lot of birders kind of view Honduras as this kind of black hole, and that there's just there's no infrastructure there, there's no this or that there, and so I just think that you really opened up something here as far as the possibility and the imagination of a place that's probably pretty easy to get to in that. So I just want to thank you for this.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, that's definitely one of our goals. And we thank Wilmer and Isis and everyone who helped us learn that. But we do think that people are so familiar with places like Belize and Costa Rica, and those are great places too. But Honduras is definitely a really good place to visit. And so we do really encourage people to consider that as a travel destination for many different reasons.
And for those of you from anywhere really, but from Minnesota, you know that Wilmer is here and he's always promoting it. So you can talk to him if you want another perspective on Honduras.
Someone mentioned having heard about the lodge at Pico Bonito being closed, and we heard that as well, that it was closed for a time and there were some troubles with permits and things, but it is definitely open and it's definitely a great place to visit. And Isis is saying it never closed, so yeah, there was some confusion. There may have been like a rumor started to try to sabotage them or something, as we had heard that at one point too, but it is open. No problems there.
It's open and it's great.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Rumors. Thank you for correcting that, Isis.
It's nice to have good local information, even in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure we're saying things correctly. Someone mentioned knowing Spanish, and it definitely helps. Greg and I know Spanish, so we're happy to share that skill as we bring a group there. But Isis knows enough English, and there is enough English known by the guides that it is possible to go without knowing Spanish, or if you just have a very basic level of Spanish. Let's see, anything else? We did not get to Roatan. There are many other places we would love to visit in Honduras, and we did just cover, sort of a corner, a large, I don't know, maybe a third of Honduras, but there's Roatan we'd love to go to. There's La Mosquitia we'd love to go to.
There's Lempira that we'd love to go.
Yeah,
Macala.
So lots of other opportunities.
Yeah, there are lots of other places. We focused on these areas based on information we knew, but also because of Isis's recommendation that those are the three, for their tours and their itineraries, those are the three places that people want to visit most in Honduras. Is Lake Yohoa, the north coast, and Copan Ruinas. But there are many other good spots. And like Kelly mentioned, when we were there, they kept talking about, oh, you should try and do a trip to La Mosquitia. It's a very wild and undeveloped and preserved area of Honduras.
I picture it like the Boundary Waters, but in the tropics. Like you take a boat in and there's no development and you can see amazing things.
Yeah, you take a boat down the river to go.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little bit like the Amazon more than the Boundary Waters because the wildlife is there. So if anyone wants to unmute and chat with us that way, or there were a few questions about the number of lifers. Let's see. Oh, when we were at the brewery, and there was the wooden holding tray for the drinks for the flight of beer. I guess that was the map of Honduras, not Lake Yohoa. Excuse me. Thank you for that correction. I was thinking like sometimes you have Lake Superior for those drinks, but this was not Lake Yohoa. It was all of Honduras.
All of Honduras.
Thank you.
For how many Honduran endemics? There's one species that you can only find in Honduras. That's the Honduran emerald. But there are other ones that aren't endemic, but Honduras is one of the better places to see it, like things like the keel-billed motmot. And Honduras does get, like I mentioned, both like northern Central America endemics and southern Central America endemics. So there are a lot of species that are regionally restricted, but aren't just in Honduras, but really don't have that big of a range.
I guess a better question is, what are the northern Central America endemics there? Because country borders don't cut off at a certain habitat. So there's lots of countries with tons of birds that don't have any country endemics, or not many.
Yeah, that rufous-breasted spinetail I know is one, but actually that's one of the things in this this guidebook. They have at the beginning a list of some of the specialty birds. So I'm just trying to pull that up here.
While Greg looks that up, Jason apologizes that he can't unmute. He mentions the lovely Cotinga. We did see a female one of those. We were a little bit out of season, so when we go back in February, we'll have a better chance of seeing them. They are an elevation migrant. So depending on the time of year, they're at different elevations based on the food, and that's changing with climate change. We saw ocellated quail like a week after in Guatemala, but we did not see them in Honduras.
Well, Tody Matmat is a good bird with a limited range. I mean, I've been surrounding that area and never seen one of those.
So I had a quick question. This is Jessica.
Hi there.
Hi, great program. If you want to go, let's say, do Honduras, and then you want to buzz into Belize or buzz into Guatemala, is it a hassle to go into the different countries as long as you have your passport or whatever?
Yeah, and when we were there, we did also need our COVID vaccination cards. So when we got to the border, so we got a bus ticket, and it was a comfortable bus. It was more of like a business traveler's bus. It was very comfortable, and then we got to the border and we had to go through some lines. Everyone got off the bus, went through first like a health line, and then a Honduras exit line, and then a Guatemala entry line. And it was maybe half an hour, and then we're on our way.
For everyone.
So as long as you have your passport and your COVID card,
yeah,
no hassles.
Yeah, that was very, very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great.
Belize, you would have to fly or take a boat or go through Guatemala for it, but yeah, like our experience traveling between the two was very easy.
Yeah.
Terrence Skelton asked if said all the mudmuts are beautiful and do they all have those awesome tails? It's sort of interesting. Most of them have that racket tail, and first I had read they preen those tails. They don't start out as rackets. But that's a little misleading, because I think those, those bristles, whatever you call those, part of the feathers, are weakened. So as it does a normal preening, the rest fall off and they leave a racket.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, because first I thought, oh my goodness, what are they, to create art on their tails, but it isn't quite that way.
Yeah.
Other wildlife besides birds, there were like those mantled howler monkeys, white-nosed coati. We saw agoutis.
Some kinds of squirrels, the frogs, some cool insects.
Lots of cool insects.
Yeah.
That Taylor's tree frog.
Yeah.
We didn't see any bats.
That's what I was just wondering about, bats. Yeah, I don't think so.
Jason asked, because Jason is, since his audio was down, he said, like Costa Rica, there must be some birds here during certain times of the year. And so aside from whether or not you want to see boreal migrants there, are there So like, is there a rainy season and there are some that's a bad time to visit, or there's some birds that where they just breed during the rainy season? So any comment on that?
I forget about that. Maybe Isis or Wilmer can respond to that.
I do know that we chose a February date because it is a good time to go.
For the Caatingas.
The Caatingas in particular, but
Yeah.
in general, like that's a good time. You do have those boreal migrants that are down there, but it is the dry season, so you won't get rained out. I'm not sure if there are things that would be specialties of the rainy season that you would want to come during that time of year. That would be something that Isis or Wilmer would have to comment on. February was also chosen by us because it's a time when a lot of people like to leave the colder parts of the United States. So that's an attraction as well.
Terrence asked about jaguars, and at Pico Bonito, they do have trail cams with lots of jaguar footage, and they have jaguar research happening there. We did not see jaguars there. We have seen them in Belize, so not far away. Eagles. I don't know. We didn't see any eagles.
No eagles. I don't even think we saw any hawk eagles, did we?
January to March, great for birding, EC says. So yes, February, we're right in there. My mom is asking about biting bugs. I'm trying to remember. When we were there along the river that last day, I got bit up a little bit. But otherwise, I think not so much.
Yeah. They were not a big problem.
I've hardly been anywhere there nearly as bad as northern Minnesota.
Right, exactly. And my mom's been to the Everglades.
That's way in the Everglades.
Yeah.
The Everglades is the worst.
Snakes. No, I love snakes, and I'm always looking, and I did not see any. No. Well, we can keep the chat up, but we can also transition to our next few slides, which have more details about our February trip.
So here you can see we've put together just some things like with the dates and then a few of the highlights that we're looking at, some of which you will definitely recognize from the presentation. But one of the things that we have highlighted here is a nighttime boat tour. So when we were at Cuero y Salado, the mangroves, they told us that they also do nighttime tours, and we didn't have time and we weren't there at night to be able to do that. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, we definitely have to put that on the itinerary. I'm super excited to get a chance to do that, to go through at night and see some different things. They have some specialty birds like agami heron and Yucatan nightjar and northern putu that you can see. And like that putu where we saw it roosting at night, you're more likely to be able to see it active and maybe moving around. So that would be a lot of fun. Obviously, trying to go to see the Honduran emerald, the country endemic. And our plan with the kids from Fundación Ale is to do, at Luna del Puente, to have an overnight. So we would pay for them to come and leave the foundation campus and come and camp overnight at Luna del Puente and be able to go birding with us in the evening and then the next morning. We still have a few details to work out about that, I think, but like that's the general idea, is the chance to give them a special experience to come out and go to this great local spot that's a great spot for birding and connect with us, and then also to see what it's like to be a guide, so they can see their Honduran guides guiding around foreigners and see what that's like, see if they like that idea, and so they get to know what that being in ecotourism is like as a career, establishing that connection, connecting our Honduran guides with the Honduran kids, and being a catalyst for making that connection.
Facilitating that and using some of our tourism dollars from our trip to help support that and help them have that experience. Yeah.
Staying at the lodge and spa at Pico Bonito and doing it at the right time so that we have good chances of seeing those lovely Caatingas. Going to visit the great hummingbird feeders at Rio Santiago. Chance to spend time there, take photographs, get really good views of the hummingbirds, And of course, margaritas with the macaws is on
On the
deck,
list.
on the list at Hacienda San Lucas. Doing another painting class at the Artesanos y Guías El Pino. So a chance again to connect with local youths and be a little bit part of the culture, do some painting, some art as a part of our ecotourism, touring a chocolate farm, of course visiting that great Mayan city at Copan Ruinas, and then visiting the Macaw Mountain Sanctuary to see what it's like for their sanctuary, see those macaws up close and see about that reintroduction process.
And someone asked how many people would be in the group, and so we need at least 6, and we could go up to 10, but we want to keep it relatively small to make sure everyone has a good chance of seeing things. And some of the places we're going to are kind of small in terms of like the boat at Cuero y Salado, and some of those experiences aren't for like a bus of 50 people, they're for a smaller group.
And 10 is the max number of participants, which is, I think, it's not a tiny group, but fairly small, and there will be lots of guides around. So it won't be 10 people following one guide, where you might say, I'm a little too far away. You're going to have Kelly and I are going to be on the trip. Isis is going to be there. We're going to have more local guides around. So it will be, feel like there's a very good, even at 10, there's a very good guide to participant ratio. So you'll feel like you really get that attention and help to know the place and see the birds.
Let's see. Terrence is asking about travel to Honduras. We flew through Newark. I'm trying to remember. I have the details.
There are a number of different flights,
some different options.
Different areas to go. And from Minnesota, then, I don't think there are any direct flights, so you're always going through someplace. You're going through Houston or Atlanta or Dallas, or we went through Newark because we found a cheap flight through Newark, but that's obviously not right on the way.
Not the most direct, but it worked.
Honduras is not that far, so even not going a direct way, it still wasn't a lot of flying or a long flight. It's quite close, which is one of the advantages of Honduras. You aren't taking a 13-hour overnight flight to get there. You can just go in one day and be there.
Yeah, so we did fly. We left Minneapolis 12:18 in the afternoon, and then we were in Newark for a while. We left there before 7 p.m., and then we were in Honduras before 10 p.m. Yeah.
And that was San Pedro Sula is the airport to fly into. So San Pedro Sula is the second largest city in Honduras, and it's up there in the northern part. So it's between these areas we were all talking about.
The capital, Tegucigalpa, is further south, so we wanted to fly into San Pedro Sula. Yeah.
And as you know, the pandemic has changed so many airline schedules and things.
So we'll see if there are more changes before February, like maybe more things are becoming available again. And yeah, if you wanted to visit Roatan, Wilmer is mentioning that could be an option. And then as we mentioned, we took a bus afterwards to Guatemala, and then we flew out of Guatemala after our visit to Guatemala. So definitely busing is an option if you want to try to visit some other places as well. Okay, next slide here.
Oh, yeah.
So a little bit more to talk about the trip here, the cost, what it includes, and then what it doesn't include. So group size, pretty small.
We want to do a lot of pre-trip support, so make sure you feel comfortable going down there, give you packing lists, information about the birds you're going to see, have some chats about it, be available for questions. That price is sort of all-inclusive once you're there. So it doesn't include airfare when you're down there, and it does include extras like alcoholic beverages or extra tours that you might decide to book. But it includes your meals, your transport, the guiding, all of that is included in that.
All activities that we would do, like entering all the sites, all the guides. Yeah.
And Kelly, going back to the flights, Kelly talked about us arriving at 9:42 at night. That was a little late, and it meant that we couldn't we had to stay right there as close as we could to the airport because we got in so late. So the plan for this is to have people arrive by 3 in the afternoon, I think is the time we set, to make sure we got enough time to get to our hotel that's a little bit of a drive away. So we're well set to be right in the spot in Tela the next morning for Lancetia, that we can do that bright and early without having a drive in the morning.
Yeah, and we have really looked at sites so that we don't have super long drives. When Greg and I were there, one day we had a drive of 5 hours, and that's not ridiculous, and many people would do longer than that, but we decided to try to cap each drive at like 2 to 3 hours so that we make sure we're having fun activities every day and we're not going to be in the car for too long. And that's another benefit of just being in that one like corner of the country, that we're spending more time outside and less time in the bus riding around.
One cool thing to note is if you fly into Honduras as a foreigner, there is a travel insurance and tourist assistance that's included in the price of your air ticket. There's a link there to the 504assist.com, which is their website about that trip. But I had not heard of that from any other country before. But it's a really cool thing to just have that sort of be included, so you know that they have available certain forms of travel insurance and tourist assistance. And that includes some things like if you get COVID and you have to stay in a spot for a while, it covers some of the lodging costs for that. I would definitely point you to their website to see what it costs. But as with any tour operator, we recommend that you get travel insurance. But some of it would be covered in that, making sure you travel by air to Honduras so that you're covered by that program. But then you may want to get other travel insurance for the cost of the trip that you're paying to us, also your airfare, other things like that, to make sure you don't get caught out if something unexpected happens.
Some discussion about rental cars. That's an option, it looks like. Yeah, we hadn't looked into that at all.
I think it's much nicer to have someone like Isis drive you around everywhere.
It was pretty sweet. Yep, then you can just look out the window and relax. Oh, yeah. All right, so that's sort of
info.
The last info if you wanted to follow up.
My information, as well as Isis's information, if you want to get in touch about anything related to this trip or travel to Honduras.
And Isis and Choose Honduras have other packages and options. And one of the things I noticed on her website, they use the word authentic, and that really struck me. I felt like that was a good way to summarize our experience. I mean, our experience was a little bit different because we were going with the intention of scouting for a future trip, but everywhere we were felt very authentic. It didn't feel like someone was putting on something special just for us. As welcoming as they were, it felt very authentic and real, and not like it was some glossy artificial thing that had been created. It feels very real and authentic. So that's a great way to think about what you might get from your experience in Honduras.
Terrence asked about COVID test required, and as I understand it, COVID tests aren't required anymore. Even when we were there, we thought when we left Honduras and went to Guatemala, we were going to have to take a test, but we did not. We had to take a test to get back to the U.S., but both entering Honduras and entering Guatemala, they did not require a test as of this March 2022. So I'm assuming that we don't have any big resurgence or COVID somehow gets worse, that probably those they will not have requirements for testing to go in. And that's the places where you would expect tests like that, is like crossing country borders, not for moving within the country. And yeah, as Jason mentioned, you don't need a COVID test to get back into the U.S. anymore.
I can't tell how many people are still on.
Oh, we have to...
There are some people still chatting, so I know we're not here alone. But we can't see everyone's faces.
Oh,
okay.
Still 30. Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sticking with us. We do encourage you to think about whether the trip might be a good fit for you or anyone you know. We do have some people signed up, but we have room for some more. So we're really excited to bring this opportunity to more people and to help support the good ecotourism that is happening there in Honduras.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
we
and here's someone
encourage.
saying, maybe you've spent time in Honduras but not birding. That happens sometimes to us too, that we go somewhere before we're as focused on that thing. So that's a fun thing to consider. Wilmer, thank you for your help. Thank you for being here and answering some questions. And thank you for always encouraging us to check this out. We're glad we finally had the opportunity to do that.
We're super excited to share Honduras with other people, bring them down there. It was a great trip for us, and we can't wait to have everyone else experience that too.
Yeah, and looking through the photos, that's what I kept thinking, like, oh, I'm so excited to show this to people. I can't wait till we can take some people here and show them this.
And I can't wait to go back.
Someone's asking about a recording. Yes, this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on Gregg's Birding with Gregg website under the Minnesota Global Birders. And that will happen in the next few days. That will be up and posted there, and then you'll probably put something on Facebook or something with the link.
Yeah, but on there now, there's a little blurb about this that had a link to the Eventbrite to get signed up, and it's in that same spot. There will be a little a link to the recording.
Okay.
Just takes a little bit. Zoom has to process it first, and then once I get it from Zoom, then I have to do a little processing to chop off some bits and get it uploaded to there. But I'll try and do that as soon as I can.
Commenting about the food, definitely it was great. Lots of fun things to try. EC's helped us try some local specialties, and then people that we talked with were very accommodating with our special diet. And then it was really fun to have some of those field meals we mentioned, like Leonel's son bringing the warm homemade food up the mountain to us. And we definitely spoke with Isis about providing those kinds of opportunities so that people don't need to leave the birding to go to a restaurant and sit down. Sometimes the lodges and restaurants have access to birding right there, and so that's a great option. But if we're like at Lanzatia, for instance, maybe we don't want to leave to eat lunch, so we might be able to hire someone local to bring some lunch or breakfast or whatever meal to us, so we can stay out in the field, and then someone can bring us some warm local amazing food.
I know in particular having some breakfasts out there is something that Isis and Choose Honduras like to do. You bring out the breakfast, and you could just
and
set up a little table and out in the field, and you can sit there and sip some coffee and have some fruit or baleadas or something, and you don't right there with the birds.
Yeah, and as Terrence mentions, everyone there is very gracious, very helpful, very accommodating. Yeah, so we're excited to sort of repay that kindness by bringing some more tourist dollars there to support them. Oh, temperature in February. That's a good question. I would have to double check on that. Can Wilmer or Isis answer that for us, or I can pull it up?
Either that, we have to look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a tropical country. It was going to be warm. It's not the warmest time of year. And with Wilmer there says could be around 80 at low elevations in February. There is some elevation change. Honduras is one of the most mountainous countries in Central America. And so, when we're along the coast, obviously at sea level, like Copan Ruinas, I think is at like 2,000, 2,500 feet. So you're going to be a little bit cooler up there. In general, for us, it was. I would say it was quite warm everywhere. But I'm a person who tends to run hot. I like to wear shorts, and I'm not.
Yeah, reviewing the photos, I did normally start the days in my zip-off pants, and then sometimes I would zip them off. And I would normally start with long sleeves over top of a tank top or a t-shirt, and then take that off. When we were up the mountain, I was wearing my raincoat and some extra layers, and it felt a little chilly with the clouds in. We definitely, as we were drove through some areas where it was really hot in the upper 90s, but where we were was very comfortable. I just did a quick Google on the weather in Honduras in February. And it's saying, you know, it will vary by elevation and inland versus coastal, but daily high from 80 to 83 degrees Fahrenheit, rarely falling below 74 Fahrenheit, rarely exceeding 88 Fahrenheit, daily low around 59 Fahrenheit, rarely falling below 53, rarely exceeding 65 for the daily low in February, depending on where exactly they were. So yeah, definitely like think spring or fall, think it's going to be warmer when the sun is out. There were definitely some clouds. Yeah, and when you're in the forest and it's shady, you'd want long sleeves maybe.
But when you're in the lowlands, especially if you're in the sun at all, but it could be hot.
Yeah, when we were on the boat tour, definitely it was quite warm in the sun. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Gregg tends to wear sandals. When we were on trails that allowed for sandals, it wasn't a problem. I tend to wear closed toe walking, like lightweight boots a little bit more. You know, like Keens from REI. Yeah, definitely layers are the way to go. Yeah. Yeah, so we always use packing lists. We have our own packing list so that we don't forget something important, and we're happy to share that with people.
Yeah, with the sandals, like, you have to be a little more careful, and but you should always be careful. There's lots of things out there, both things that could hurt you, but also that you could hurt them. That you don't want to step on things, so always be looking where you're stepping.
And it's good to know if you're prone to stubbing your toe or tripping, or, you know, Gregg isn't bothered by a little bit of mud. Some other people are, so yeah, definitely I encourage some closed-toed footwear.
I would definitely have it with. You don't want to be just having sandals for sure. Social flycatchers are common. Could well be around in Costa Rica. That kind of a bunch of birds that are sort of similar. I call them kiskadee lookalikes, with various lengths of bill and things. But social flycatchers is very likely could be what was seen in Costa Rica. Yes, there are kiskadees. I think it was just a great. I don't think we got lesser there. I don't know. With all the travels we've done around the Americas, sometimes you get confused as to like, where did we see that one, and where did we see that one?
You have to review the list to know for sure.
Yeah.
Panama. Okay.
Okay. We That's why I eBird everything, because then I can always go and look it up. Say, what did we see there? Okay, this is what I saw.
Yeah, I don't want to misstate. My memory is not so strong. I remember the experience more precisely than like exactly what species where.
In Guyana, there are about 10 times as many greater kiskadees than lesser.
Well, I haven't been there yet, so I don't have to worry about confusing that. We have never seen habiru yet. We were not far from them a few times, but where was that we were? Oh, in Belize. If we just had a little more time, we could have gone and seen some.
Thanks, Kate, for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for your good questions and conversation.
I know before we went, Wilmer was mentioning that there was a jabiru that was around somewhere, but we didn't see it anyway, or it wasn't around when we got there.
La Mosquitia. Okay, another reason why we have to go to La Mosquitia. Okay.
Lake Yohoa had one.
So we did not take a boat tour on Lake Yohoa, but that is an option. So if we hear about habiru there, maybe we do that.
Well, it is amazing to compare the picture most Americans get of Honduras with the picture you get of it in your presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yes.
Yes, happy to help round that out because I do think a lot of people just have in their minds this idea of it not being a good place for political reasons or other things. And so definitely we have a more complete picture than that, and we're very excited to share it with people. Yep, Isis is on board, ready for a boat tour on Lake Yohoa. And Isis can make it happen, believe me.
She can make anything happen. I'm gonna
Yeah, let's
stop the
close
share.
the PowerPoint so we can see people again.
Yeah. Now Kelly and I can see the videos of people.
Gracias. Great presentation, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Wilmer.
Wilmer.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for all your info that you're dropping in the chat.
Yeah, no, if you know, if when you get people interested, yeah, you know, if you want to have a short meeting with folks later on, yeah,
Yes.
I'm up for it. So just let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of question and feedback we have after this presentation, and then we'll go from there. We could have more follow-up meetings. Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
definitely, please share the word. Help us make this trip happen.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is great.
Yeah,
So
it does. It sounds like a great trip.
Thank you, Wilmer, to help me to answer those questions. You write very fast. You can talk faster than write. So thank you.
oh, this is good. This is fun. It's always good to talk about Honduras. Yeah. So this is good. So Isis, that Habiru, what was in May that people saw it in Lake Yohoa?
Yeah, sometimes Javier are showing around Yohoa Lake, Cuerisalado, and La Mosquita is very common. It's
Yeah.
more common than the other part of the country. Also, a great surprise for us is in Guanaja, show the American flamingo. And yes, after like 70 or 90 years that just was like historic in the hotspot, and nobody have seen them, but a few, like a month ago or something like that, there was photograph the flamingo. So we were very happy. There are some birders that flew to Guanaja to try to see it, but they couldn't. And after 1 week, you show again. Yeah. So, you know, birds are birds.
Yeah, they fly.
Yeah.
It makes them special. You never know for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, that was a question. This is Terry. That was a question I'd asked in the chat. You mentioned sitting by the lake, but you didn't mention, or I might have just missed it, about if there are shorebirds that come through there. You maybe weren't there at the right time of year, or I mean, is that along the path? Like I'm thinking, like, well, I'm down in Louisiana, so I'm thinking what we get, black neck stilts, yellow legs, that kind of thing. Do you get those kind of things down there in Honduras at the lakes? Or you say it's on the ocean, so maybe if you have to go by well, those aren't really ocean birds. I guess, are there marshlands there, like Minnesota has in Louisiana, or is it more rainforest?
There are all the habitats, and that north coast, one of the, like, you go from one to the next very, very quickly because of the mountains right there. You can have the mangroves and a marsh and a field and a plains, and then the foothills and the mountains,
But
all just like whoop.
Where we were, like, I don't remember seeing mud flats. So where we were, it was more mangroves or marsh with those floating vegetations.
Okay.
So I don't really remember seeing those shorebird type birds that you would expect to see in like a muddy sort of mud flat.
There were things like the jacanas that are on top of lily pads and things.
Right.
At the edge, lots of herons, so the wading birds.
More waders.
The various different herons.
But I'm sure there are some mud flat areas that you could go and find some of those birds. It just wasn't We packed so much into our time.
Yeah. Like you talk about the boat trip. Are they different gulls and stuff that they have there?
We did not see many gulls, did we?
No, and in general, there's many more species of gulls in the northern, like north. So if you're really into gulls, you go to places like Newfoundland and Alaska, and
Right.
there's more like not a lot of gulls down. I mean, they're definitely there, but
And we didn't spend that much time on the coast. We made that special trip that one day, but mostly
To the
we were
beach, yeah.
inland. Yeah. Yeah, we were
Well,
in coastal regions, but not the coast. Yeah.
I was thinking of that touristy area.
Yeah, that's on the
That's where you
lake.
would expect if there were gulls. That's where
That's
you'd
true.
expect to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I was wondering if you could see things from that. That was beautiful, you know, looking out on all the places you ate and stayed just look wonderful.
Yeah, and I really credit Isis. Like, she knows. She is really good. Tourism is her passion, and yeah, we just had a great time with her.
Yes, I wanted to say special kudos to Aziz. Very impressed, a young lady doing that. It's wow, we've come a long way, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Easy is also the vice president of the ornithology group in Honduras. Is that correct, Easy?
Yes, Wilmer is correct. I'm
Yes.
vice president for the second time.
Awesome. Good for you.
Good. Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of work, you know, promoting all these birding clubs within the region in Honduras, you know, with a lot of young female participation, a lot of folks that are into biology and promoting.
And Isis put on the first birding festival in the country of Honduras and had more female participants than male participants. I mean, she makes it happen. She gets out there and
Yeah, in November we're gonna have one festivals in Copan Ruinas, and the 60% of our participants are females. So that is a good thing for us, and other part are young people. So that is another good thing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying because our philosophy is sustainable tourism. For us, it's important that local people are involved to respect the environment and the people who work with us or whatever position they have. For me, are not worker. For me, are my friends, are my people who collaborate with us. I never said he's my employee because not. There is my. We can get more things with familiar way to treat the persons, and that's why I got a lot of good places to go. And when you go with me, you will see that we talk as a familiar because we are friends for many times. So one thing that you should know that in the country right now, I'm the only female tour guide in avitourism, right? There's not another professional guide in avitourism. There are many other in nature or another things, archaeology, but in avitourism, right now I'm the only woman doing this time of trips. And so I feel very proud to be the host for Kellie and Gregg's trip. And you will be very welcome to visit my country.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're an inspiration.
Yeah, you are an inspiration. Kudos to you. It is a male-dominated industry, and it's just great to see what you're doing. It's so impressive, the inroads you're making. And like you say about really treating people in a familiar way, thinking of people as collaborators, not employees. Or I think that's part of what made our experience so wonderful. It really felt that's part of that authentic nature and part of that, like, we're all friends and we're all having this great experience. It's not about an exchange of money so much as it is about building something together and having this experience together.
And we definitely noticed that wherever we went, the people we met would warmly receive Isis. You could tell that they were excited to see her.
Great. That's great.
And Jason Caddy is pointing out, yeah, when I say the industry is dominated by men, it's not just in Honduras, it's here in the U.S. as well. So definitely getting more women involved and supporting the women and thinking about how can we do even better with our ecotourism and avatourism and conservation goals by involving more women and getting more women in positions of leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, if you ask about females in Honduras, I'm very sure that they will see that men will say that there is no woman. But I'm here. I'm here.
You keep telling them, I'm here, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Yep, keep showing them how it's done.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I'm in Louisiana in my Orleans Audubon Society here. That we have a lot of people that like to do global birding, like you guys, and I'm definitely going to pass this on to them because
Super.
they like, yeah, they would really enjoy this. I mean, they're not afraid to go to places. They went to Cuba. Well, there was a short time when everybody was going to Cuba and Madagascar and stuff like that. So I think they would love this. So I'm really excited to tell them about ISIS and Isis, right? Is that how you say it? Isis? Isis.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes I said,
we have a very
I am Isis, but not easy.
okay. But we have a very large Honduran community here in New Orleans, and I know it's easy to get here to Honduras from here to Honduras.
Yes.
Yeah,
They go home all the time, you know.
Oh,
they
yeah.
every month, you know. And so and they're opening a lot of, you know, specific not just Hispanic restaurants, but specific,
Honduran specific
restaurants. So I'm excited to see that. But,
well, and that's a great reason to go too, to learn more about the neighbors in your community and experience a bit of their culture. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much. We appreciate appreciate all y'all's work.
Mm-hmm.
So wonderful to see people. The bird. I did want to learn a little bit about the bird-friendly coffee. We've learned that through the Audubon Society. I mean, I don't drink coffee, but my husband does. And I noticed you went to the chocolate farm, but is that all? And that's also a coffee farm, you said?
Yeah, they also grow coffee there at Luna del Puente, so it's both of them. And I know Choose Honduras does coffee tours where people just go to tour coffee.
And Isis is a big fan of coffee, so she knows all the good coffee places. She can really do a good tour on that.
Yeah,
I love coffee.
Yeah, that's a big thing in New Orleans is coffee. So yeah, that would be they definitely want to include that. So
one photo I wanted to include but didn't was of some it was like prepared like coffee, but it was with chocolate beans. So do you remember that? I forget what it was called, but yeah, we went to this little coffee shop and I had chocolate but made like coffee. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah.
I like the sign that they had at Luna del Puente that said, it was in Spanish, but it basically said, water is essential for life, because with water we make coffee, and without coffee we all die.
That's right.
True.
That's funny. That's funny. That's great. Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.